Hello, good morning.
All right. Buenos días, gente, la gente más bonita del Valle, Dana ISD of America. Good morning. Thank you again for joining us today, this morning, with this fantastic treat, an opportunity that we have for you all. We have two very, did I say very extraordinary women, beautiful women, intellectually, uh, uh, de corazón, personajes. I mean, just I have goosebumps, and those of you who know me, for me to get goosebumps because of the sometimes the hard skin that I have, like that tells you how excited and nervous actually that I am to actually present you all Alma Florada and Isabel Campoy. Um, they will be sharing a very powerful message with you all as far as ourselves as Mexicanos that we are, and our students, the Mexicanos that they are, and the languages that we uh, have at our disposal, right? And one of them that we heavily, one language that we have deeply rooted in our blood, in our body, in our soul, and then this other language that we are acquiring and also, you know, want to absorb and integrate, verdad, with con nuestro español, verdad, and almost become one, right? Pero ya no quiero decir más porque no les quiero quitar el tiempo, and I don't want to say something that's like, what is he saying? He's rambling on. That tells you I'm nervous. Uh, ladies, I will go ahead. Well, before I do that, I do want to say, teachers, this is also something that we're going to do for our parents here in our community. All right. So we will also be working with Velasquez Press to treat our parents and deliver this type of message with them. Uh, so make sure of that. Also, we will be recording this session. So, uh, you know, if for some reason you don't want to be seen as far as the recording is concerned, you can turn off your camera. And but we will be recording. Also, make sure that you keep your mics muted, all right? Throughout the session. Okay, so please make sure that you keep your mics muted. And with that being said, also the sign-in sheets will be dropped into the chat towards the end of the session. Ladies, take it away.
Thank you so very much. And definitely good morning, Dana. My name is Isabel Campoy and
Yo soy Alma Florada y estoy encantada de estar con ustedes una vez más en el Valle.
conocemos, we know very well El Valle. We have been many times. Yesterday, we were speaking with some of your representatives there, and we were saying how difficult it is sometimes to reach you by plane. But we have been in your schools, we have been with your parents, and today we just want you to welcome you, all of you, to our family, the family that we have created through the years in order to fight for the language rights that our children do have. At this point, Alma Flor,
Yes.
would you like to talk about?
Since Isabel was mentioning the many times we have been in the Valley, I was remembering this morning that the first Children's Literature Conference of books written in Spanish that happened in the United States happened in Brownsville. This was as far back as 1973 or 74.
None of them were born.
I know, but I was present there, and that was my introduction to a very meaningful, lovely area of this country where people indeed have, as you mentioned before, a very rich corazon and a commitment to the children of their communities. And we're very pleased to have the opportunity of talking with you today and looking forward to talking to the parents in a few days. And all I want to say now is that we're going to begin our presentation with a video. This was a video that I surprisingly found out in YouTube a couple of days ago. It fascinates me every time that I go into YouTube and find new interesting things that teachers who have so much creativity and determination put together and present to us. And I thought that it would be a good introduction to what we want to be saying during our talk.
So Leticia, whenever you want.
Listen to my grandmother's stories and say familia, madre, amor. Because I can speak English, I can learn from my teacher and say I love school. Because I am bilingual, I can read libros and books. I have amigos and friends, enjoy canciones and songs, juegos and games, and have twice as much fun. And someday, because I speak 2 languages, I will be able to do twice as much, to help twice as many people, and be twice as good in what I do.
We are now going to share our screen with all of you so that we can go into the power of 2 languages. There is very little that you don't know about that power. What we are going to do today is just remind you and provide you with some helpful hints in order of how to go about it.
Language is indeed the most important of human creations. Language allows us to understand ourselves and understand others, to learn, to join in social projects, and become part of a community, to forge alliances. Language is a cultural heritage transmitted by our family and community. And above all, this is something I'd like to stress because it's not said enough, but language allows us powerfully to break free from the restrictions of reality. Reality imposes limits to us, but language allows us to dream, to plan, and to transform that reality.
You will see throughout our presentation that both Alma Flor and myself are very aware of the importance of speaking more than one language. Throughout history, words have been the golden bond for social, cultural, and economic survival. Words can nourish. Imaginen cuando sus madres les dicen, te quiero. They can educate when your teachers tell you, hay que estudiar. They empower when they say you are a person that has two languages. And they heal when people come and say, un poquito cada día. Words sustain our identity and feed our strength, and that begins with our name. Having more than one universe of words must be available for everyone. It cannot be the privilege of some to speak more than one language. And bilingualism is more than a goal. It is a human right.
There is an added power in speaking two languages. It should be an additive, not subtractive process, where a second language is learned without losing or limiting the growth of the home language and culture. Then we truly have the power of two languages.
Because being bilingual is natural for most people in the world. Just look at this chart. There are more or less 193 countries recognized by the ONU in the United Nations in the world. 193 countries. And however, there are more than 7,000 languages live today. So if you make the math, the division, it's that there are many more languages spoken in each country than countries in the world. So the majority of people in the world are bilingual. This does not mean that all languages spoken in a country receive equal treatment.
When one language has more power than others, the least powerful languages tend to disappear. This is why the number of languages in the world continue to diminish. Some speakers must make great efforts to keep the language alive. This is what happens, for example, with Hebrew, which was a language that had been lost as a spoken language. It was only a written language, and yet people determined that they wanted the language to regain its strength. We've seen that happen with European languages, like Welsh, for example, with languages in Spain, like Euskera and Gallego and Catalonian. These are languages that will disappear unless the people who speak them continue determined to maintain them alive. We have seen an important movement like this in New Zealand with the language,
Maori.
The Maori language had practically disappeared. There were no young people who spoke the language, and then there was an effort made for grandparents who spoke the language to spend long time really to help raise young children in what they call the language nests, so that the children would acquire a language that their parents didn't speak. The language was brought back this way. A similar effort has been made in Hawaii. And so it's important to have these examples and know.
Well,
that-
because we have invited them to be part of our family, I am going to tell them a little anecdote. We were born in the first half of the 20th century. That makes us historical. But one of the situations that I had while I was a child was that the language that was spoken in the region where I lived, Catalonian, was forbidden. So nobody could speak that language once you went into school. In school, only Spanish was allowed. It was very difficult because we played in Catalan, because we loved in Catalan, because we were embraced in Catalan. Our games, our plays, our friends were in Catalan. And however, when we reached school, we had to learn in what for us was a second language. In a way, it was a second language. Of course, moving so much around the world and living more than half of my life in this country as a first generation immigrant, I have lost contact with that language, but I remain completely full in my heart to regain, and poquet a poquet, estic aprendre el català una altra volta. Poquito a poquito sigo aprendiendo catalán otra vez y cada vez. Vamos a continuar con esto.
Well, the situation in Mexico is that a very large number of the indigenous languages have disappeared. They have died. And now efforts are being made, and you might have seen that very, very recently, Mexico have declared 68 indigenous languages as official languages, languages that people will be able to use in public spheres, and that the government is determined to offer education and services in those languages. It's a pity that this will happen when the number of speakers of those languages have diminished so much, but it's a proof that if we want languages to survive, we must make an effort to do so.
Yes.
Languages survive in different ways. Obviously, it helps when there is a government status given to those languages, as has happened in Spain, where now there are 5 official languages. It's happening now with Mexico, with this very large number of official languages.
68.
Now, and sometimes the survival of languages create a situation of diglossia. And this means that a country uses 2 languages, and they're both strong and used by everyone, although not necessarily in the same context. An example that is typically always mentioned is that of Paraguay, because it's one of the places where this is very clear. There are 2 languages, Spanish and Guarani. Guarani is the indigenous language. And even though there is a certain amount of social class connection with these 2 languages, the truth is that Spanish is a language used publicly in education, in professions, in legal matters, in commerce, and yet Guarani, the indigenous language, is used as the language of the home, the language of love, of tenderness, the language of friendship, and the language of music, and that permeates all classes in the society, so that even those who come from typically homes where the first language is Spanish use Guarani also as a very strong part of their communication. That's a situation of diglossia. The 2 languages exist with separate environments, and it's in a way we see some of that in the United States when we see Spanish used more in some contexts than in others. Now, cultural pride is one of the reasons that languages survive. We see that the effort made in Spain to maintain Euskera, Gallego, Catalan, alive, comes from the pride of the people of belonging to a particular group, to a nation within a nation, and determined to not lose that heritage. Of course, languages also survive. Those languages that could be considered minority within a country when they represent an economic advantage. And this is something that's important that we think about today, because this is something that is happening with the Spanish. This country has eventually come to recognize the economic significance, the advantage that it is to have a language that is one of the strongest languages in the world. I mean, Spanish is in the top 3 languages of the world. Now, we should then consider a little bit who is going to have that economic advantage.
Yeah. Well, we want it for us. From a national perspective, languages are power, definitely. When you are able to represent your mind in the language of the people that you are negotiating with, you have the power of knowing how you are going to negotiate whatever it is. And would you like to say something?
Well, yes, that brings me to something that I want to share, but I will share it a little further on. When...
Well, in that respect, of course, porque somos latinos y porque sí somos latinos, latinos por cultura, por herencia, latinos por lengua, hemos escrito este libro en el que sencillamente manifestamos nuestro orgullo de ser latinos y en algún momento hablaremos más de eso, pero te voy a dejar que hables de lo que querías.
No, porque
cuando yo acabé, ok. Yeah. Entonces voy a continuar hablando de la, I will continue speaking about the tremendous honor that it is to speak Spanish, that is a heritage language and part of this country's wealth. Because Spanish is the first language of 418 million people. And if you look at this map, you see that it expands from the South Pole to practically Alaska. It is the language of the 21 countries. And just imagine what it represents to be able to talk, share, expand, communicate, and negotiate with 418 million people in the world. As a second language, English is the #1 second language in the world. But as the first language, first is Chinese, and the second is Spanish in the world. Spanish was spoken in present-day United States before the arrival of other European languages. Y se ha estado hablando simultáneamente el español con el inglés en Puerto Rico desde 1508, en Arizona desde 1528, en California desde 1530, en Florida desde 1565, en Nuevo México desde 1605, en Texas desde 1690. Señores, tienen ustedes historia. Y en Colorado desde 1694.
The recognition of the value of languages has led privileged families throughout the world to ensure that their children would learn languages. This is why the children of the elite in the world are educated to speak a minimum of 2 languages, many times more than 2. When I was a teacher in Peru, in South America, in an extraordinary, wonderful school, the Alexander von Humboldt School, every student was learning 3 languages, German, Spanish, and English. And when they completed their high school, they were prepared to be able to study in any English-speaking country because they passed the Oxford exam. They were able to study in Germany if they chose because they had passed the necessary qualifications for university in German, and they were totally prepared to study in any Spanish-speaking country because they have excellent Spanish. The trajectory of those students. I still keep in touch with them. We Zoom frequently. I Zoom every month with the students that I had in a bilingual school in Peru, the Abraham Lincoln School. But I occasionally, every 2 or 3 months, I Zoom with the students that were my students more than 50 years ago in Peru in the Humboldt School. And it's extraordinary the opportunities that these students have had throughout the world. Now, I want to share something very personal that Isabel and I experienced here in this country. We get invited to go as authors to many schools, and we've been in multiple schools all over in the United States and in other countries. But one time we were invited to go to a private school in the East Coast, so prestigious and expensive that the tuition, the annual tuition of students is way high over what the regular annual income of teachers are in this country. This was, we thought, well, these parents are paying all this much money for the school. They must value it very much. Let's accept this invitation. Maybe we learn something about what they're doing there different, and that maybe we can bring to other schools.
Public schools.
Well, to our surprise, there wasn't anything that different. Yes, the campus was beautiful, the building was beautiful, everything was very well equipped. When it came to what they were giving the students, there were only 2 things that were really significantly different and important. The first one was that a strong part of the curriculum, very strong part, a separate element in the curriculum that was developed very well, was speech. Now, I'm not saying speech therapy. I'm saying public speaking. These kids from kindergarten were being encouraged to speak in public, to speak with all the nuances and the strength and the conviction of a good speaker. They were prepared to be leaders, because who are the people who manage to convince others and to lead are the ones that can speak strongly in public. And these children were being prepared by their parents and teachers to have those leadership roles. The second thing that was happening in that school is that every child from the beginning was learning Spanish, and they were learning Spanish seriously. They really were developing all the abilities in the language to understand, to speak, to read and write Spanish. One of the evenings that we were there, we were invited to a private home. Well, I have to call it a mansion because that's what it was, of this very important family who had their children in the school. And it was very lovely. The children came a little bit like those that you have there, not with a school uniform, but certainly with their blazers, with their ties, very well groomed. They were introduced for a moment, and the father, in the house, the host, made a point of having the children come to us. And then he asked me to speak Spanish with the children. Well, it's very difficult to have that forced situation. Now I love to talk to kids. I have no difficulty doing it. This was so forced, but anyway, so I asked the kids, what grade we're in, and just a couple of things, what their sports they like, whatever. And the kids answered, and then the man said, no. You make them speak. You need to hear how they speak. So I said, well, I began to ask the kids something, more broader, like, what have they done in the summer, etc. And then the parents said, okay, thank you to the kids and send them upstairs. And then he challenged me and he said, well, tell me, how good is the Spanish of my children? I said, oh, the truth is, it's very good. You must be very pleased, it's very good. And then he said, well, what I want to know is, if you were to compare the Spanish of my children with upper class children in Latin America, how would they rate? And I said, well, the truth is their Spanish is really excellent. They would be, He said, would they be in equal basis? I said, yeah, I think they would be. And then, of course, now it was my turn to ask some questions of these men. And I said, you know, I'm surprised that you are so interested in your children learning Spanish. And knowing very well that this was not the case, I asked him, well, do you have some Spanish heritage? And he looked at me and said, no, 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 we do not. I said, oh, and then where does your interest come from? And he said, well, my children are destined to someday be CEOs of important companies. My company, he was CEO of a big pharmaceutical, does have business with Latin America, but when my children grew up, they should be able to go into a board meeting in Central America or Latin America in general and have the upper hand. And for that, they need the Spanish to do that. He was that blunt, that honest, and that clear. He knew.
And we know very well that many of our children in this country speak Spanish at home and are learning Spanish at a school. And we also know how difficult it is to learn a second language, to lead into languages in this country.
Are you telling me?
No, I am reminding you of all the times in which you said to be a mother of 4 children that told me on a daily basis, you brought us to the United States and we are only going to speak Spanish, English, to speak
Yes.
English.
Well,
so I do realize that it's not easy.
I was holding, sharing that to another moment, but I will share it now if that's what you are asking me to do. Yes, all my 4 children, the youngest was born in the United States, the 3 older were born in Peru. Very early on, very, very young, began refusing to speak Spanish. We didn't have any Spanish speakings around us. There was no bilingual program available to them, unfortunately. And it was my responsibility to either make sure that they would have the power of 2 languages or let them become just basically English monolinguals with maybe a little bit of Spanish. Every one of them made it very difficult for me. I'm not going to go into all 4, but I will tell you about one. He was probably the least aggressive on refusing to learn Spanish, but he was very strong about it. He said, I am going to study to be a computer engineer. And in computers, this was at the early times of technology, everything is in English. Nothing is in Spanish. I don't need Spanish. I don't want to waste my time reading and writing Spanish. I don't need this language. I say, well, sometimes I use very strong examples just to really try to call their attention. Say, look, Alfonso, if there was a train coming at full speed and you were to run it to cross before that train, I would just go there and grab you and not let you do that, because having you killed by a train is not something I'm going to allow. Well, losing a language is like being destroyed by a train. Of course, he said, oh, mother, you're so exaggerated. The things you say, I say it because I want you to remember it. Losing the opportunity of having a second language is like being run down by a train. Well, he eventually accepted and grudgingly still did the reading and writing that I was demanding of him, and never spoke a word of English to me that I would answer. I would simply have them repeated in Spanish.
Good.
Time passed. He became a senior in college, on his way to be an engineer. And at that time, IBM developed the largest computer in the world at the time. And they sent out a request to universities, an invitation to help them select a senior in engineering that would be willing to spend a year in Florida and Boca Raton, learning about this computer and becoming really very privileged knowing about that. And of course, many students, over 300, applied. And Alfonso was one of them. And they send them one first examination, and then they pre-selected some, and they sent a second and pre-selected even more. And they did a third exam. And by that time, he had, had his hopes so high, but there were still many applying for this. And then one day he got a call. And the first question was, are you Alfonso Zubizarreta? Yes. And Alfonso, do you speak Spanish? Yes, I do. Do you read Spanish? Yes, I do. Do you write Spanish? Yes, I do. Well, this position that so many people want is yours. Now, you were only the 15 as the result of the exams. But the technology that the other 14 know more than you, we will put you up to pair with them here in a month. But there is no way we can have them learn Spanish in a month. And we want to show this computer to engineers from South America, from Mexico, from Central America. We need someone who really knows Spanish to do that. And this is why the position is yours. After 1 year with IBM in that position, Alfonso graduated and got his first job as a vice president of a technology company. He was a kid, but he had the power of the two languages that have allowed him to be in that selected position of knowing that important technology.
Alfonso is incredible because he was joking the other day in the phone and was saying, do you remember, mother, how many times I have told you, how come if you looked at the map of Latin America, you didn't see how big Brazil was and you didn't force me to learn Portuguese? That's because he was made,
that's because he was eventually made responsible for all of South America. And today he speaks perfect Portuguese, which of course was a lot easier. Well, it's really made an impact on his Spanish, but his Portuguese is perfect because knowing Spanish made that third language a lot easier to learn.
So we told you at the beginning that we were going to bring you into our family, and we are here in order to talk about the importance of speaking two languages. But we thought that speaking to you from our heart, from the bottom of our experience, from the anecdotes and histories of our lives, that would bring to you the truthfulness of our heart and the wishes that we have for all of you, for your parents and for your children, to be the people that you save from that train that is going very fast in life. So Latinos in the United States have suffered by not knowing English, something that prevented from participating in higher educational levels at the best jobs. It would be a great shame that those whose parents suffered from not knowing English will now suffer from not knowing Spanish. And we know that the social and economical and situational conditions in which everybody had to learn English and sometimes were forbidden to speak any other language. We know it in our heart. We have lived that, and we know that we can surpass that first stage and go forward, because learning and being in education implies making our horizons broader, always broader. And as the poem of Alma Flor says, is in order to do twice as much good in the world. Dual language education goes beyond learning another language. It aims not only to be able to use two languages, but to facilitate knowing how to navigate successfully into cultures.
Well, there are ways in which we can enhance the learning of a language. I strongly believe on the importance of reading, and I want to share with you something specially about this, which is the importance of reading aloud. When I came to this country and had to face being a professional in English, my English was not that strong. And the one thing that I did and helped me become more proficient was to read aloud. When you read aloud, you are exercising all the aspects of language. You hear yourself reading, so you remember, you are activating your listening memory, and you will remember better words that you have heard. You are seeing them, so your visual memory is activated, and you'll remember better things that you have seen. But you're also pronouncing. And this is very important because many times we are shy of using a word for the first time. We might know the word well, we have read it, we have heard it, but to say it when we have never said it before is hard. But if you have said it in the privacy of your a corner in your house or your bathroom where you've been reading aloud, and you've said these words, then it's already in your memory to be able to say it yourself also. Now, if we're going to read things, it's beautiful to read literature, and literature also touches in a special way the hearts of children. Textbooks provide important information, and the language is in the textbooks, but literature brings culture and motivation and excitement and interest in the reading. So Isabel is going to show you some numbers about what is happening with literature in this country.
You probably have seen this poster many times. The last time that this was recorded was 2 years ago, 9 days ago. But look at these representations. In the United States, books that represent American Indians or First Nation are 1% of everything that it is published for children. For Latinos, it's 5%. Latinos and Latinas is 5% of the total, which is not much, knowing that we are 50 million in the country. 7% are publications for Asian Pacific Islanders and Asian Pacific Americans, which are a much smaller number than Latinos, and that is something to take into account. 10% of the books for children are African or African American culture embedded. 27% have as main characters animals or other. And this is understandable because so many of these books are for the little ones, and they want to have friends as main characters in their books. But 50% have as main characters white. And what happens is that children reading books need to see their faces, their language, their culture, the representation of their food, the way that their grandparents celebrate any festivity. They need to see themselves represented in books. For that, Alma Flor and I are doing everything we can. And when we started, there were very few Latino writers, but right now there are so many Mexican, new, young, energetic teachers like you that are writing their own books. And we invite you to write your experiences, to write about yourself and the little things that you do. If you find a page in blank and you don't know what to write about, think about the last incident that you have, going in the bus or talking to your grandmother, or a toy that you received, or
experiences in their classroom.
Experiences in your classroom, and then you will see that you are full of stories. And we would love to read them, that's for sure. How to achieve bilingualism, Alma Flor?
Well, it's important to have an atmosphere of respect and value of both languages. Children need to know that their language, whatever their language may be, in the case of our children, Spanish, has as much value as English has. One language is not better than the other, that they both deserve to be recognized and that they will both bring significance to their lives. And we have to create a need to communicate in both languages. There has to be special moments and circumstances. I'm personally an advocate of having two teachers whenever possible, each representing one language, and then maybe switching between two classes. because I have seen that throughout the world as being a very effective model. When the children know that there is only one language to be spoken with that teacher, it creates a reason to do that. I also believe that it's a lot easier for teachers to become very knowledgeable of a language, a culture, the literature in one language than having to do that in two. I think bilingual teachers in this country that have to teach in two languages are really heroes. I mean, all teachers are heroes, but bilingual teachers are twice as heroic. But anyway, this is maybe a very big issue to talk about here. I just want to leave you with the thought, but certainly create moments and circumstances for which the language is needed. Then teaching in the language versus trying to teach the language. You know, we all use the grammar of the language before ever even knowing that there is something called names or verbs or adjectives or whatever. I mean, by the age of 5 years and 6 years old, we're using all those, the structures of the language without having to study it. And it's that natural acquisition of a language that we should really promote. And then there'll be time later to analyze the structure of the language, but that's not how a language is acquired. A language is acquired naturally, using it, listening to it, being read to in that language, singing, learning poetry and rhymes and games. And then, of course, facilitating the acquisition of the language through authentic literature. Unfortunately, many books published in Spanish are not written originally in Spanish or translated by someone for whom Spanish is the original language. So the Spanish might be stilted and artificial and sound too close to the English, when in reality, the best translation is a new version in which it's as separate and different from the language, one language from the other. That's the closest it sounds like English, the least authentic it is. It should sound different because the languages are different.
And I wanted to say something about learning. With the Spanish language has approximately 175,000 words, and English approximately there. And what I want to tell you is that with 2,000 words, you can start creating conversations. Now think of that. You need 2,000 words. Every child should learn in school at least 1,000 words in order to progress per year. So if you are instilling in your students the fact that they need to learn 1,000 words per year, you can also do that with those parents that do not speak the language, with those friends that do not speak the language, and just put a goal. And this is the month of creating goals. I will walk 10,000 steps per day. I will learn whatever. So yes, 2,000 words will give you enough tools para saber que se puede entender, que se puede hablar y que se puede comunicar en otra lengua. Throughout history, words have been the golden bond for social, cultural, and economic survival. Words can nourish, educate, empower, and heal. Words sustain our identity and feed our strength. Having more than one universe of words must be available for everyone, because bilingualism is more than a goal. It is a human right. And now we will ask
the video.
Yes, Leticia, that is there standing with another video of the same poem, another poem by Alma Flor, talking about the importance of bilingualism.
Again, this was created by a teacher who happened to have been my student.
Porque hablo español, puedo oír los cuentos de mi abuelita y decir familia, madre, amor. Porque hablo inglés, puedo aprender de mi maestra y decir I love school. Porque soy bilingüe, puedo leer libros y books Tengo amigos y friends. Disfruto canciones y songs, juegos y games. Y me divierto el doble. El doble. Y algún día, porque sé hablar 2 idiomas, podrás ser un doble de cosas. Ayudar al doble de personas. Y hacer lo que haga el doble de bien. El doble de bien.
Venna Bancroft.
Sé bilingüe. Sé bilingüe como nosotros. Como nosotros.
Qué lindos, ¿verdad? Ok. Y ahora Leticia, que es la jefa de la tecnología, nos dirá exactamente cómo regresamos a lo que ella quiera. Nosotros estábamos invitando, we were inviting this morning to anybody that had questions to, are you seeing us, Leticia?
Yes,
Yes.
I am.
Okay.
And I
So-
do have one question from the chat already. So if anyone has any questions, please go ahead and place them in the chat. But one question that came up while you two were giving this fantastic presentation was from Jose de la Rosa. How can we make Spanish speaking students comfortable in the classroom?
Well, I think making all students comfortable in the classroom is one of the primary goals of a teacher. I think that knowing our students is what might help us make them feel comfortable. We need to give them the assurance and the demonstrate to them, make it very plain to them that we care for them as a person. We want to know about who they are, what they like, what their hopes are, what their dreams are. And this is why Isabel and I have been, for the longest time, teaching the workshop of authors in the classroom, where we begin by writing I am poem, every student in the classroom. This, of course, gets demonstrated by having the teacher first create her own book of I am, where the teacher will say, I am a daughter, say something about her parents, I am a sister, I am a cousin, I am a niece, I am a friend, and introduce herself in this very personal way to the students, and have each of the students do the same and introduce themselves, and then present this to each other, and then go to the home and ask the parents to also introduce themselves. I think that this getting to know each other, like with the song of The King and I, is essential to begin to make that situation of being comfortable.
But I would also say that the best way to make a child from the Spanish heritage that comes to the class and the rest of the students that speak another language is to make sure that everybody knows that that child comes from a culture that has the best painters, the best scientists, the best mathematicians, the best doctors, that they belong to a culture with the most incredible architectural pyramids. When we say pyramids and the students say, where are pyramids? And they say Egypt, we cry. We cry because those children are just 100 kilometers from the most fantastic pyramids, and they say Egypt, that is on the other end of the world, and they don't say Mexico, the proudest country in our beautiful Hispanic world. And if we applaud where these children come from, if we give this child always a photograph on the wall saying, this is a Hispanic painter, this is a Hispanic artist, this is that child will put their head up and say, I am proud of being and speaking the language of these people. And that you cannot imagine, because it is honor and dignity and pride, the one that keeps our identities forward with the strength of who we are.
And I will add something, going back to language. Make sure we make very clear to everyone that that child already has a strong language and now will be acquiring another. And so eventually it might take a while, but eventually that child is going to have 2 languages. And this should be a motivation for the others to also want to have 2 languages, but make them aware that having a first language and being in an English-speaking country where you learn a second one is an advantage and something to be proud of.
Yeah. Having 2 eyes, 2
but,
arms, 2 legs, 2 languages.
But let me say something here also about books. This is why we were showing all those numbers of the need to have books in Spanish. I have faced that situation of children who don't want to speak Spanish and who feel ashamed of who they are. And many times this has happened in California, in our valley, in the Fresno area, in all that agricultural area. And I have been to schools where the kids who spoke Spanish didn't want to speak it and would look down and would pretend they didn't know Spanish. And then I would take my book, Gathering the Sun, and I would open that, because it's very striking art, open the pages and read the poems. And then I would, when the children were seeing that and seeing how much pride there was, and when I got to the page of Mexico and when I show that, and then I would ask them, I had initially asked, any of your family works in agriculture, in the fields? Oh, no, they didn't want to accept that. But then I said, oh, what a shame, because I have this book to celebrate the farm workers. And then when I'm showing the book and they're seeing that something important, because we give so much value, cultural value to books. So this is why it's important that books reflect that reality. We're showing this. And then I ask at the end, anybody knows anyone who, then all the hands go up. Oh, my aunt works on the strawberries. Oh, my father works on the carrots. Oh, my mother works on, and then there is pride on that heritage and pride on that reality. So we have to use literature that celebrates Latinos in multiple ways to have the children who are Latinos feel, hey, books are important. They're telling us books are important and books talk about us. I think that's it.
And now there are hundreds of books that show that reality, because many times people say, oh, but we don't find any books. Believe me, there are hundreds of books that show that reality. So I think that we are approaching the end of this, Leticia.
We are, yes, and we have so many more questions in the chat. I wonder if perhaps, because we'll save the chat, I wonder if there's a way we could maybe get together with the 2 of you and think of some answers to a couple more key questions that we didn't have time to answer today.
You can send us those questions and we can write those questions.
We'll write the answers and send them to you?
To each of the people that ask the question and answer. It will be beautiful to have a dialogue, a personal dialogue with each of the hundreds of teachers that we are talking to today.
Thank you so much, because we have several fantastic questions, but we do have just about 4 minutes left. So I don't know if you want to take just a few minutes to answer one more.
Yes, right. Sure.
Sure. So Daisy Lopez asks, would you recommend presenting sight words in Spanish to non-English learners as early as kindergarten? The reason I'm asking is that students are not presented with another language until they reach middle school. How beneficial would this be to them?
I think we can introduce languages to children as early as kindergarten, for sure. Sight words are fine. They will be much better if they're connected with a song, if they're connected with a game, if there is some physical and emotional context connected with them, they will be remembered far more. So They're very simple, wonderful, easy songs to teach the children and sing along with them in kindergarten. And then, of course, you can also let them look at the written words of that and highlight maybe some of them. I would definitely encourage that to happen.
Absolutely. And we must remind ourselves that the brain is a very powerful engine. And the brain at that age, it is making connections connections of expanding the wealth and the geography of its mind. So the first language and the second language will not get in the way of learning one or the other. They will expand, they will create relationships. And if precisely as Alma Flor says, if you relate that in an emotional way, if they read a book in Spanish and then they read a different one in English, or they read the same one in Spanish and in English, they will reinforce concepts. And not only that, but because most of the academic vocabulary comes from Latin, by the time they get to middle school and high school, they will know absolutely 100% of the origin of all their academic vocabulary.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, I think we have 1 minute left. So, Mr. Arellanos, did you have any closing remarks?
Pues nada más un aplauso fuerte, right? A visual aplauso, you know, whether it's a clapping or since we just started the year, a big old fireworks kind of aplauso, right? Ladies, I mean, your words are beautiful, you know, and hopefully all of us that heard your words were able to feel that beautiful message behind that, and that we are beautiful, right? That we are beautiful as Mexicanos or Anglos or Asian or whatever whoever we are, like, you know, we are powerful, we are beautiful, you know, and I mean, you know, I'm trying to use big words, but I shouldn't because I'm not a big word guy. So, pero no, muchas gracias de parte de Dana ISD. I mean, we are truly honored. Teachers también, thank you very much for being again here with us, and thank you for all the comments and all the thank yous and all the powerful messages that you have been putting in the typing in the chat. I mean, I can go on forever, but you know, make sure everybody that you signed in, and make sure that you continue attending any other sessions that you have registered for. Also, enjoy your lunch when it's time for lunch. And gracias. Danke.
A ti.
Merci beaucoup.
Muchísimas gracias.
Dankeschön.
Bye, here you go.
From Velasquez Press, just want to say thank you, Dana ISD educators. I saw your chat, great energy, great questions. You guys have a great leader. Looks like you guys are like a great team right off the back. My name is Mark de la Cruz. I'm your local consultant for your area. So I did leave my phone number, my cell number, and email. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm here for you guys. And I just want to say thank you again. Happy New Year to every single one of you. And I did see the best last name in there. I think it's Maria de la Cruz. I am de la Cruz. So you have a great last name. La Prima.
Arellano, sir. Arellano, straight out of Zacatecas.
Eso. El mero
Mr.
aguacate.
Arellano, sorry to interrupt.
Arellano, Zacatecas.
So, Mr. Arellano, I know the chat has been very active and some people are asking for the sign-in sheet again. I think it's been lost in the chat. Could you put that in one more time for everyone?
Let me see. Yes. We will before. There you go. There it is. Miss Jeannie beat me to it. You know, they're a lot faster than I am. You know, yo más soy el gritón. That's it.
All right, thank you. And now we'll just give a moment for our speakers to say goodbye, and then we'll let everybody sign off.
This is un abrazo enorme, enorme, con todo nuestro corazón, nuestro cariño. Aquí estamos para todo lo que necesiten. Un saludo y hasta siempre.
Muchísimas gracias por esta oportunidad. Nos encantó poder estar con ustedes y saber que vamos a recibir esas preguntas que todavía tienen y se las contestaremos y continuaremos el diálogo.
Hasta pronto.
Hasta pronto.
Chao,
Mucha
chao.
suerte.
Bye.
Bye.